big surprise to anyone that two of the top backs possibly come straight out of the Alabama stable of running backs, and Josh Jacobs and Damian Harris. And Josh Jacobs, not necessarily a guy that got a whole ton of work until later in his career at Alabama, kind of waited in line. But what does he bring to the table? And kind of run through the running backs as you see them.
Yeah, I mean, Alabama had their pro day yesterday. I think Jacobs was in the 4.25 or 4.52, 4.55 range, so a little bit better than what he was previously. And you know, Damian Harris, to me, he's number one on the NFL Draft Bible big board. I know a lot of people like Jacobs one. For my money, neither one is a first-round running back. I don't have any. I just did a mock draft yesterday up on the site. There's no running backs in the first round there. So, you know, to me, Harris is a more proven runner between the tackles. Bruiser, maybe not as much agility or flash as a Jacobs. The one thing I noticed watching Jacobs is Alabama will tend to use him, you know, not as a gadget player, but a lot of movements, a lot of shifts, a lot of pre-snaps coming, you know, back and forth, and maybe do some more end arounds. I think he's a more versatile guy. He can catch the ball out of the backfield, where Harris is probably, you know, more of a two-down back or rotational guy at the next level. Darrell Henderson from Memphis. I think this guy, you hear the Kareem Hunt comparison a lot, you know, not a speed burner, but has breakaway speed, probably plays more quick than fast. So, you know, I think he's a guy, speaking of the Chiefs, if they're looking for a Kareem Hunt replacement, day two, Darrell Henderson from Memphis, I think, can be an outstanding pick. Devin Singletary from Florida Atlantic was a guy who people viewed very highly at one point, and then didn't run the 40 times that, you know, people expected. So he's maybe in that day two, even day three range. And Elijah Holyfield.
I've done that too.
So, I mean, this was a guy I really liked. And, you know, we talked on the previous episodes about not putting too much stock, not putting too much emphasis in the combine numbers. At the same time, when you look at the track history of running backs who have ran a 4.80, the success rate is not very good in the NFL. So it's going to be tough. He's a big boy. He's hard to bring down, but 4.8 speed at the NFL, I just don't know if that's going to cut it. So, you know, not the glitz and glamour at the running back position. I'll give you one guy I really like a lot from Slippery Rock, Wesley Hills. He's a guy who's dealt with some injuries throughout his career, did extremely well at the NFLPA Collegiate Bowl, got called up to the Senior Bowl, was not invited to the Combine in Indianapolis. But, boy, I mean, I saw him run over the LSU safety and not think twice about it, and it was impressive. He's got some agility. He's got some size, 6 foot, 220. This is a guy on day three. And I'll tell you what, I go back to Terrell Davis in the 6th round. This guy, Rodney Anderson out of Oklahoma. I mean, 3 season-ending injuries. But I'll tell you what, 2 years ago when he stayed healthy, you watch his film, that single season is as good as any year that any running back had in this year's draft class. So for me, if you can be patient till day three, there's some quality running backs there.
Yeah, they had a running back situation there with Trey Sermon, where Rodney Anderson only got a handful of carries the first 3 or 4 games of the season, and then he packed a season plus worth of productivity into about 11 games for the Sooners, going back to their college football playoff appearance against Georgia. And he ripped up the Bulldogs, even one of the more talented defenses in the nation, in the Rose Bowl that year, for the tune of about 200 yards rushing. Benny Snell's a guy that obviously, you know, I bring the collegiate side. You obviously scout what the projection is. Benny Snell is a guy that's a workhorse. There's always a concern about too much wear and tear at the collegiate level before they even step on an NFL field. What are your thoughts about Benny Snell?
I mean, the wear and tear thing, to me, the average NFL career is 2.5 seasons. So, hey, whether you carry the ball 1,000 times, 200 times, I'm not going to put too much stock into that. But Benny Snell, I love his enthusiasm. I love his character, his personality, the way the teammates gravitate towards him, the way that he's a fiery guy, that he can get the team going. He's a spark plug, right? We saw that with Kentucky, best season they've had in quite some time. Now, how does his game translate to the next level? Listen, maybe doesn't have that next level gear, you know, or that breakaway speed. but he's a bulldog. He's going to fight. He's going to gain those extra yardage. He's going to give you all that effort. And I don't think he projects as a starter. He's a guy that comes in, maybe holds down the fort, is a spot-in starter. You've seen Tevin Coleman throughout the years, maybe step in and carry the load when called upon. Maybe not a guy you want to be your RB1, but a guy who can step in and be a capable RB1, a very capable backup, a guy that, maybe sneaks into round 3, but I think more of a round, 4 through 6 projection.
I made the mistake apparently a couple of years ago of leaving David Montgomery out of my top 10 running backs in college football list. And I never knew that there were that many Iowa State fans out there, let alone watching me, because nobody had ever said anything about Iowa State football to me until I left David Montgomery off that list. He's obviously a fun one to watch at that level, but what do you think of him?
This is like a guy that, again, didn't really impress with the measurables at the combine, but that's not what we expected anyway. This is a gamer. This is a guy that, breaks a lot of tackles after contact. He's, maybe a little bit more tougher to bring down. A guy that's going to exceed expectations, maybe taking, I think, day 3 at this point. But I wouldn't be surprised if David Montgomery outperforms a lot of guys taken ahead of him. And you see, I think he was in that 4.6 range, which, it's hard to take a running back of that caliber that, inside the top 100. And I think, a good comparison might be Alfred Morris, who slid down to the 6th round because of that poor 40 time. But at the end of the day, the guy knows how to gain yards. So, I'll take David Montgomery on my team all day long. You tell me day 3, I can have David Montgomery. I love it.
Got 2 other guys for you at the running back position coming out of the Big Ten that didn't have huge careers, but one of them really finished strong after a strong start. A middle to his career at Ohio State that was plagued by some injuries and the emergence of J.K. Dobbins, but then he kicked it back up a notch for his junior season, and that's Mike Weber.
This guy's ready to go. I mean, are you kidding me? I know he didn't even start on his own team, but again, just like the Alabama backfield, I mean, Ohio State's got a talented backfield, so maybe not as many carries, so not as much recognition in the media, but I mean, I don't see, when you turn the film on, see what this guy can do. Not only is he a tough runner, he's also capable of catching the ball out of the backfield, got a little wiggle to him. I mean, this guy, I love a guy that just puts his head down and gains the extra yardage. He's not looking for the sideline. He's not looking to run out of bounds. Mike Weber is a guy that I am very impressed with, and somebody I'm probably more of a fan of Mike Weber than most people. To me, I believe he's in my top 5, 4, or 5th best running back, right behind Travion Williams from Texas A&M, who we haven't spoken about.
Okay, I'm feeling a little bit smarter now because I liked Mike Weber as well, and he did have some fumbling issues earlier in his career at Ohio State, and again, he hit the ground running as a freshman, almost had just a couple of yards shy of 1,000 yards. And then J.K. Dobbins kind of stepped in, was the go-to guy, and was the guy that just showed a little bit more explosion. And I really thought Mike Weber must have done something in that injury rehab that really focused on the next level and gaining that burst that he didn't necessarily show earlier in his career. And he cleaned up some of the responsibility in terms of reliability and really showed up in some big games for the Buckeyes the last 2 years. And then Miles Sanders, of course, at Penn State. Saquon Barkley was a complete freak coming out last year. Miles Sanders was actually a much higher rated recruit coming out of high school. And for college football junkies like myself and the people watching, we kind of had to scratch our heads at times just because it seems like some of these guys come right through. We barely blink an eye. They don't seem like they ever emerge as stars at this level, and they decide to come out and boom, they may get a decent shot to play some significant minutes at the NFL.
Yeah, and Miles Sanders, I mean, I think, talk about a guy who benefited from the combine out there in Indianapolis. To me, he had the most impressive combine performance of any running back. And, I thought then there's a guy who significantly increased his draft stock probably a round or two, where, I thought he was a day 3 guy. Now I think he's our 5th rated running back on the NFL Draft Bible Big Board, which puts him right in that, round 3, late round 3, maybe early round 4 range. But, you heard Saquon Barkley last year talk about, hey, this guy could be better than me. He's ready to, when he gets his opportunity to shine, he's going to take advantage of it. And that's what Miles Sanders did. And what a hard act to follow, but you know what? You did just about as good as you can do. It's hard to replicate going number 2 overall, but I thought Miles Sanders, for the limited amount of work and opportunity that he had, he took full advantage of it.